So we decided that we needed to hear external thoughts, and it would be nice to have, a critical discourse around the process, the curatorial process. So for that, we wanted different sort of people. So we decided to invite Smita Dalvi, who is professor of architecture at Pillai College of Architecture in Mumbai, and she also teaches urban design and architectural history and documentation. So that is one of our invited guests. And then we also have Shwetal Ben. So of course she's been watching our journey more closely as a part of the family committee, who was also involved in the process of developing the exhibition. But today we've invited her in her capacity as an artist, an educator, also a filmmaker, and she's currently associated with RV University in Bangalore.
All right.
And Dhiren Bhai Vaishnav, who's based out of Bhavnagar. He's running slightly late, but will catch up with us soon. He has now been a trustee with us for about a year. He has been involved in very different with different industries, and used to be a registrar for a while at Bhavnagar University, and has been managing several institutes at Maila College in Bhavnagar. Who brings with him a vast experience of management and public relations. So, and he is very involved in arts and cultural fields in Bhavnagar locally. So to bring in that perspective of how the community in Bhavnagar responded and how we want to move forward, it's important to have his thoughts. And then we invite trustees to also listen in and hear our discussion.
Okay.
So with this, I will pass it over to Ishita, our curator and archivist, to do the introductions.
Thanks, Avni. And thank you all for being here, in accepting this invitation. I think it sort of became I don't mind calling it a sort of a greed, right? As a curator, when you invest so much into a process, I've always been like, we should do this, we should do this, we should do this. So when it came down to completing the engagement with our curatorial members, whether it's the curatorial assistant or researchers or our intern, it felt right to have an audience to their presentations, because it sort of gives us a much more larger, deeper, and more critical closure to the exercise that we started. And why I feel this has been important is somewhere it's a very young project. One is it's a small team, but also a very young project. And in 3 years, one has sort of seen the intent grow substantially. From being a family archive or even a person's archive or a divan's archive, we soon started developing it as a family history project. And from there, in a year again, we said, okay, we want to constantly work with the community, look at the regional history and the narratives. Only then a project like this can sustain or become sustainable for the community. Otherwise, it becomes very inward looking, and there is a self-celebration and a self-validation, which gives you good sleep at the end of the day, but it doesn't really justify why you are into this for the larger gamut of things. In this pursuit, there were 2 smaller programs that happened. One was last year's internship, which is 2022. The exercises were such, and the processes also were quite relevant, where the interns and we all together co-curated a small community engagement experience, so that their exercises in documentation, in cultural mapping, and in oral history interpretations could be further explored with community responses. Once we did that, there was definitely a sort of a solid response. We even extended that engagement to understand how many more kinds of responses are there, or how many more kinds of community members are interested, are sort of around. Some whom we could not even meet, we came to know about them as, sort of the conversation started making its own ripple effect. Then, of course, we did, so that was called Antaral. This was in August 2022. And then community engagement is such a thing which comes with its own sort of a little pressure of keep the ball rolling, otherwise people will forget you, especially with so much happening around us every day. So we came back thinking that okay, we also want to see with the community that histories also have a more engaging or a more experiential side to it, and we curated alap. Now, while one part of alap was very performative, but the performances were also inspired from the writings which are found in the archive or which have been written by Sir Patni, or it is the poet's interpretation of his writing, which sort of
Mm-hmm.
now became more information for us also that, oh, these are the ways you can engage with. And along with it, what we did is we sort of did a soft launch of our oral history project. And we took some creative liberty there 24 hours before we put down a script and we sort of introduced the project of oral history through a performance or sort of a spoken performance. Um, Now, these smaller initiatives sort of gave us this leap of faith, which we, I mean, sort of an impetus to this leap of faith, which we took in 2023. That one is we could just do a public launch, have dignitaries come and do ribbon cutting or light lamping, and do a very straightforward exhibition which tells Sir Patni's stories and the family's history. Or we go beyond and we sort of invest ourselves into a curatorial experiment to say, is community engagement really going to happen? Is it really a long, stricken relationship that we will be able to see through? And that's the sort of provocation or a proposition with which we
Mm-hmm.
began. So I sort of became sort of took on the curatorship from the archivist role. Tana and Soham initially joined me on this journey in terms of saying, okay, one could look at different topics and areas for research, so that we have more things brewing. In that sense, it was not really about making things grand, but it was so experimental, perhaps, that we wanted to try and test what would happen with sound memory and archives. We already have that collection, 13 oral histories are done. We already had the cultural mapping going. So if we take that forward and we started speaking with the community members, what would we unearth? And then Tana Trivedi, who is a professor at Ahmedabad University, has been working with issues of land culture and politics through the papers at the archive, almost since the same time as the archive began, or even before that. So, what would her research sort of open up if we went and said, we want community to sort of participate or partake in launching Open the Archive? So, these are the ways we began. And then, of course, the idea was to keep growing the team members, have the right set of team members on ground working between or liaising between the curators and the um, community members, and of course the archives itself. This is something that, I mean, I'm just closing with this much to sort of set the context. What happened after we set out to do this in about 8-9 months is what was there in the pitch that I sort of shared with you all yesterday, where we tried different exercises, of course, went back and forth, held on to the idea of community engagement, and saw through the exhibition the way you will see it now. But this was the larger premise that, okay, how strongly do we feel about it and how strongly does it come out? And hence, a critical review to say what are the ways we could have been careful, what are the ways we have slipped, what are the ways we have achieved it, and what's more to becoming a cultural and a community based center that we could sort of objectively pen down for ourselves with this kind of a discussion. We would have loved to make this even a public dialogue I mean, of course, but I think we have all exhausted, still sort of recuperating from what has happened. But we do feel this conversation will be useful to a larger audience, and hence the recording and documentation of it. So while it will help us in our operations, we also feel people, audiences would also be interested in a conversation like this. Those who have visited the exhibition or who have not been able to, but would want to know how things happen. So with that, I will sort of hand it over to the team members who are going to present on behalf of all of us.
Yeah. May I ask one question here? I did not get a sense of what was the duration of the exhibition.
So exhibition opened on 16th of December 2023. It went on. It officially went on till 13th, 14th of January 2024. And then with all the interest and advice, we kept it on appointment basis for the 15 days, 10 to 15 days.
Okay, but the events that you're talking about, like Antaral, Alap, etc., they all happened in August.
So these are from the year before,
Hmm.
August 2022 and December 2022.
Okay.
And exhibition happened in 2023.
Mhm.
But they definitely became the stepping stones for. So one has also gone to the extent of writing about it in the curatorial note.
Okay.
And somewhere I wouldn't mind saying that perhaps Avni and I saw it coming. So every time we spoke about the last event, we said Anati Motu Karishuto, this is how we'll do it. So what will happen? How will the community respond? Will we get the same interest? So even when we changed from academic to cultural night, we saw a shift in attitude, or so we were constantly looking at them and they were looking at us, of course. That's what happened.
Yeah, right. Sure.
And just because you asked this, I feel like also sharing. So I don't know if you noticed this in yesterday's presentation, if you got a chance to listen to it. So in
I
July
did.
2023, we did a community meeting also. So we presented the exhibition research and ideas. They were very nascent ideas. I don't think ORDAO and all of that had come out by then. But the research part of it and the idea of the way we wanted to do storytelling, we did take it to community members within Bhavnagar, so that the critical feedback is again not just coming from the extended team of Patni Archives, including the family and trustees, but also from people of Bhavnagar. And they were also very cutthroat in sort of which was needed. Okay, this is how people would want to receive it. And some things we took it forward, some things we interpreted, and that's how it went.
Hi, so I am Anjani Trivedi. I am the curatorial assistant for the project since March 2023, and I'll be starting the presentation. And I'll just share my screen. Please let me know if this is visible or not.
Yes, visible.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So, what we are talking about today is, as Ishita mentioned, the community engagement that happened for the month-long exhibition, right down from the processes and the exercises that happened, which were before, during, and after the Patni Archives open house. So the exhibition was titled Ordao Patni Parivarna Vartao Kathiawadi, in which the exhibition was spread across 3 sites in Anantwadi in Bhavnagar. As and when the subjects will change, I will let you know of the people involved with it. But for the presentation today, there are 2 presenters. One is also, there's me. There's also Astha Pandya, who's the research assistant for with Patni Archives. And also Yakni Trivedi, who's the curatorial intern, and Ishita, of course. So the presentation will talk about the processes of interaction and mapping, like right from the research conducted to meeting the community members who aided the research, also the production processes, as well as engaging with the community, along with sharing the learnings and the way forward. And these are all the aspects that we hope to cover and to discuss today. So, as I said, the exhibition was spread across 4 sites in Anantwadi. The first was the Juno Bungalow, which is the former residence of Sir Patni and is a family property till now. The Patni Archives office, which is nearby and which is in Sadhana Society. Then there were exhibits throughout the street, which is the neighborhood of Anantwadi. And the last one is Sir Patni's Samadhi. And looking at the kind of subjects that were spread across these 4 sites. So each of the sites had specific subjects on which the exhibition was built. For example, Juno Bungalow had a performance based on the family stories, which the stories were itself extracted from the oral history project, and it used the bungalow as sort of a backdrop for the performance. The archives office had the exhibition about land, culture, and politics. Um, the neighborhood of Anantwadi had exhibits related to the stories of the area, also extracted from the oral history project. And lastly, the Patni Samadhi became the space for displaying the material related to the cultural mapping of Bhavnagar. So we will walk through each of these research subjects and their outcomes for the display. But before that, here's a video which gives you a walkthrough across all the sites and what the exhibition looked like. Sorry. Yeah. So the first subject that we are talking about is the land culture and politics, which was the exhibit of which happened at the Patni Archives Office. Now, this particular subject was curated by Ishita and by Dr. Tana Trivedi, along with Raj Maurya, who was the research assistant. So their research focused on the experiential learning of history through unexplored archives, which are related to significant experiences from the Diwan's Kacheri. So this talks me about the administration of Sir Patni and about his politics and the various initiatives that were taken up by him, and drawing sources from the Patni archives, a variety of archives from, say, everyday state administration to questions related to national freedom were revealed. And also, not just talking about Sir Patni and his history, but also his relationship with his sons, his relationship with other dignitaries and people that he came in contact with. And then moving on to the ports and railways of Bhavnagar, of how they became a very important part of for the growth of the city, for the economic growth of the city. And the research sort of culminates into bringing all these forgotten stories in front of people, that the stories which are not which are part of the archives but need to be brought in front of the people. For example, this is a short video that was made by Raj, which shows the multiple subjects that he looked into during his research. So as you can see, it didn't only remain about Sir Pattani. It was about so much more. It was so much more related to the history of Bhavnagar and all those forgotten histories that needed to be brought forward. This was also a film that was screened at the month-long exhibition for the land, culture, and politics part at the um, in which sorry, the film docs is about the lifelines of Bhavnagar, and this is a short preview.
Anjali, I think volume વધારો પડશે તમારી side. Okay, then maybe sound is not coming through. That's all right.
So it's quite a long film, so we are not able to show the entire film here. But the credits here, you can see that it, while the team was involved, Raj was involved, and the other people from Bhavnagar were involved. But it goes on to show that this was the community engagement that was required for the subject. And there were various people in various administrative and bureaucratic positions who helped us in making this film and also aiding the research related to the ports and railways of Bhavnagar. Next, we come to the oral history project, which was also exhibited at the Sadhana Society office, the Pattani Archives office. And Astha and Ishita and Yagni will take it forward from here.
Hi. So apart from land, culture, and politics, the Patni Archives office also showcased the inner workings of an archive, or also how the archive was built in 2020, how the trust has been functioning since 1993, and also the various collaborations that the archive has undertaken over last 3 years, and the exercises. So one of the most significant exercises to come out of this archive has been recording oral histories of family members and acquaintances. And so far, 13 members of the family as well as acquaintances have been recorded. So these stories brought forward a lot of anecdotes about the inner workings of the office, how the administration used to function, how from the family house also a lot of queries were answered for the larger public, as two family members were divans from the family. And to introduce oral histories into the exhibit, we also decided to build a family tree where we started the generation from Sir Patni and Lady Patni up till the fourth generation that is currently based in different parts of the world, uh, which also told us about how they have lived in the bungalow so far and what they have done. We worked with multiple vendors to make the design interactive and showcase the display in which we tried fitting in 50 names, women as well as the men, and also put forward transcripts that were recorded as a part of oral history project for others to read and understand what sort of questions these people were asked and what sort of stories came out of it. There were more ways in that which oral history was exhibited, which you can see as a part of performance, where the whole script was basically turned out to be anecdotes that were shared from these 13 members and how they had described the Juno bungalow or the rooms or their lives so far. And it was one of the outcomes that was prepared in the shortest amount of time, where the team came in at the last minute and they started preparing for the last month that we needed to open this exhibition. And then they performed during the opening ceremony as well as during before the closing ceremony. Another form that came out of this research was neighborhood stories, where Yagni and Ishita will take you forward.
Yagni, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Hello, I'm Yagni Trivedi, and I was associated with the archive as the curatorial intern from March. And I've worked on the spatial documentation projects and the neighborhood resource that you will be seeing henceforth.
Thanks, Yagni. So I'm just stepping in because Yagni is not feeling too well today. So I'll do my best, but of course, if I miss something, then Yagni can sort of pitch in and complete it. It was very interesting, as I said earlier, that we have been doing spatial documentation, and somewhere why spatial documentation for a family history project, which sort of very soon led us to some of the research inquiries that Yagni had put out. Um, Let me first connect it with what you already heard, that we have all these family histories. None of these family histories are complete until you read about what they felt about the house or about the city or about the neighborhood. And hence, one started looking at what are the stories or the patterns that are coming out of the oral histories, and why is there this focus on Anantwadi as a region. There were two or three research questions that Yagni had pointed out, and one of them that sort of appealed to us, perhaps keeping the curatorial intent in mind, was to look at the impact of a changing neighborhood on a family history and hence on the city. So how neighborhood sort of becomes a connecting node between family or families or a community and the city and development. And we didn't even know where this was going to go, of course. It was shooting in the dark, but this was to say an internship would have an angle of research and not just about the job that you have been asked to complete. So Yagni ventures out, starts looking at the drawings, also starts talking to community members, using the drawings, using different kind of exercises. There was obviously first certain sense of not resistance, but a sort of hesitation because they also didn't know why we were talking to them, what is going to come out of it. So stories of very different kinds are coming out. It has its own pattern. So there was one pattern building from the oral history that we already had. And here are community members who are all residing in Anantwadi, whether it is their place or it's handed down or it's rented, and they have a very different association or sense of storytelling about the neighborhood. From here, sort of, Yagni moves to, can we go to the next slide? Yeah, these are the different. So we started looking at what are the patterns that emerge, right? The whole idea of mapping stories and tracing what are the different directions in which or sub narratives that it sort of starts creating for us. There was a very strong sense of then and now. There's a very strong sense of change. Perhaps we were also interested in, but also something that was coming up in the conversations. Something which was also difficult to visualize because there aren't many archives, not only with us, but when Yagni sort of tried meeting different bureaucrats or visiting the administrative archives, there aren't many documents which tells you about how neighborhoods change, urban neighborhoods change. And then the question about how will we study it, what are the different aspects that we could focus on. Of course, we knew that the scope of such a study was much beyond this kind of an exhibition. So we sort of listed them out. We wrote what were the key impact that one wanted to talk about. And then we sort of wanted to see how this data would sort of self-curate itself at one point. Move to the next. And what started happening for us, because these were all parallel processes. So while on the other hand, we could see something is brewing at Sadhana Society, which is Patni Archives office. At one point, something at Juno Bungalow would happen, and then performance happened there. And on the other end, we had the Samadhi, where, of course, was our own space to sort of revisualize an exhibition space. So between all of this, where does Anantwadi fit in, and what are the stories, and how the fact that the stories are of Anantwadi, but they need not be very in situ. They need not be identified in terms of a Google pin, but sort of take this connecting street as a part of creating or curating an experience and taking people back in time. What are these stories now? So, of course, there were many, again, possibilities, some which could be told easily, some for which, again, we didn't have references. And hence, Yagni sort of identified the 6 stories which she felt were very critical or creative, could be told creatively. And of course, there was this push also from our end that while, of course, things are coming from a critical inquiry, we tell them in more engaging ways. The stories and the whole idea of connecting the sites was also, yes, igniting curiosity and sort of directing or leading people from, or leading audiences from a family archiving project to a cultural project. So what you see happening between the 2 sites is that shift of scale. And that is where the neighborhood studies sort of, or neighborhood stories, which came from the studies, which became the perfect transition. Now, how do we tell these stories? We were again parallelly thinking of Odao, or the rooms that were supposed to sort of conceptualize these stories. There were going to be 12 Odao. And the fact that these stories in neighborhood are lost with some of the homes. Um, it was also a sort of an not easy, but a strategic idea to say we have empty plots in the site. So could these homes, which we can't see, could these be used, or the compound walls be used as a reimagination of storytelling? So imagine if those plots were opened up to us, they would actually become the Odas, and more could have happened. But for now, these compound walls sort of started holding traces of doors and windows as a gesture to say we are opening or going back or tracing stories of old houses and old houses of this neighborhood. Then the execution of it, which had its own, I think, implications, because the doors and windows, we all understand they don't stand by themselves. And here are already built walls. You don't have structural members. The vendor's role became very critical. We had our own ways of thinking of how it would happen. They had their indigenous knowledge. And then, of course, together the team sort of cracked it open on ground, which involved Anjali, Yagni, Astha, and the vendors. We can move on and see what, and of course there was some sense to how each story is trying to tell something else. So where are they positioned, or how are they positioned? So from the choice of doors and windows that we had, why is something in a grilled window versus behind, versus something is behind a mirror door? These kind of smaller nuances were creatively worked upon. And this is where the final walk begins. So you have come out of Sadhana Society bungalow, you have come out of the oral histories. Here is a sub node which will transition you from oral histories or family histories to neighborhood studies. You can just keep going. And I think there were no direct images, as I said earlier also, because these are not archives we choose to preserve or unknowingly don't document. Now maybe it's different. And hence, even this sort of not miss, but substitute alignment of archival images or researched images, these became very important. And in between, walls taking the role of navigation. What was very important was to still tell the story through different voices. So while here the story only is told through the QR code, some of the other stories have both. They have Yagni's creative way of writing, but they also have the QR code to the oral histories or the interviews which they are based on. So it was also important to sort of give the audience as many different kinds of experiences as possible, and to say there is never one way of telling these stories and imparting these experiences. And this is the final wall that you arrive at. So this is the entry to the Samadhi space. Now, before you go into this exhibition, we're sort of going to diverge a little bit to see how this internship was a two-edged sword, but in a good way. The fact that documentation or spatial documentation was the intended task in some terms of activities is what sort of inspired, knowingly or unknowingly, the kind of research that came out. So this is what the year-long internship looked like. Every 2-3 months, you can see there are shifts in the plans as well, in terms of from documentation to asking questions to visualizing the narrative to going back to the site and then coming back to finishing the documentation. And even with the documentation itself, it was not just about the houses are not all there in the same way, same shape. How do you study the spatial content? How will you create it? What are the different aspects of it? So this also started needing its own mapping process. There are three properties or three sites in terms of properties. So there's Bhavnagar, Delhi, and Panchgini. It was important to look at the overall scenario, which houses are accessible, which not. Of course, this exercise was started earlier in 2022. There was a preface to it, but always helps to sort of, recontextualize or relook at what you have been doing and how that spatial documentation would help, especially when you're planning a curatorial exercise before ahead. And there was even in that time, sorry, let's go back to the slide before. Even earlier, internship was not devoid of these questions. So while they were also studying the Juno Bungalow, Navo Bungalow, not Navo Bungalow, sorry, Juno Bungalow and the Panchgini house and documenting it, and somewhere looked at the Delhi house, they had also questioned or looked at the questions of Land Ceiling Act. And perhaps that, which was a trigger, sort of allowed us to look at the current scenario of what has the neighborhood sort of become and given back to the city or the urban development. Yeah, we can move. So these are the questions which I am talking about, which sort of led to the neighborhood studies that we looked at. We can move. Further breaking down of the questions, these are all very research exercise driven steps. Looking at what the Urban Land Ceiling Act had already told us, but what are the new questions that it put forward for us? Does it help us in looking at the relationship between Anantwadi and Bhavnagar? And somewhere looking at the relationship between sites now. So while we are getting into now the state of drawing Navo Bungalow, and then we finish with drawing Juno Bungalow, the relationship between these sites and helping us build a focus on what is Anantwadi, how much is Anantwadi, how much it was and how much it is. We also wanted to see that shift. Now at this point, going back to family, as I said earlier, community members as well, but also going back to the family members, looking back into the archives, what drawings we have, what are they telling us? Do they tell us anything about the changing landscapes? So you're documenting two scenarios or multiple scenarios sometimes at the same time. And what does it mean to document something which is in change or in transformation? Has been itself a very important learning process. So now these are the representations of what we have arrived at, what it was in 1960s, or how much was farm, how much was built, how much was Pattani family property. And from there, we will see different versions of, we can keep going now, how photographs helped, how sitting with family members, interviewing them. So Kumar Patni, Sanjay Patni, Jaivan Patni, all three of them sort of played a very pivotal role in working with Yagini, one after the other. So each site was also spoken to with at least two people to make sure that, everybody's memory sort of tracked into, because it's way back in time and houses are something I think we all associate with, but also take it for granted. So we think ayati staircase che but ayati nathi, and how do you cross verify? Especially when you start seeing it again in 2D also. Living in a house and being able to tell a staircase was this high or on this side, it's a very different value or a measure. But when you have to draw it out, how do you communicate? So also skill exchange was somewhere happening, and these are the different iterations and final different level of drawings for Navo Bungalow first, and then we'll see Juno Bungalow, and that's um, Juno Bungalow. And of course, these are again steps which are sort of given. You would do sketches, you would do measure drawings. What is there, we try to measure it, but Navo Bungalow doesn't exist. So that's important to clarify. Juno Bungalow exists, but it's in a modified form. And what we are trying to draw is an older version of the original version. And then, of course, the facades and the layers of something like this. So even the house itself has gone through its own transformation. So how do you arrive at the closest view possible of what it could have been or what it has been? And I think I'll close with the same perspective or the same thread, which is to say that even exercise like spatial documentation, then it eventually found itself leading to a few number of things which start happening in the exhibition or in the idea of a curatorial presentation. So one is, of course, it inspired neighborhood studies as we spoke about. It also became very important to uh, show the drawings, but not just show them because we have done them. It's sort of relating to the story of photography studio, which will now come in the cultural mapping section of the presentation. It also goes back onto the wall because when you reach Samadhi space, it sort of it sort of completes the journey. And one of the things when you're thinking creatively was to say, what do we present here? And when you read the subnote of that area, it sort of talks about the journey that the family has made, hence the curatorial team has made, and hence the audience has made. And hence the drawings became the right thing to sort of represent on the wall. And it also goes back into a creative exercise of backdrop for a performance of this kind, which is inspired from oral histories. But because the protagonist over here is the bungalow itself first, and then of course the two key family members, the backdrop is sort of the stories of the in the space itself. And we work with digipaint artists to sort of recreate two important rooms to as much detail as possible. So we're also discovering in the process how an exercise found new meanings and new forms with different creative professionals. So that's about neighborhood studies, and we can go back to. Yeah, this is what the exhibition looks like. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll take over back again, in which we are talking about curatorial processes that took place in the cultural mapping section. So this part of the exhibition, as mentioned before, it happened in the Pattani Samadhi. So how we started is that we walked around the city and tried to understand the various cultural aspects of what makes it a city, what makes up its culture, and then sort of trying to also bring it back and connecting it to the archives. When we talk about a city, there are always these questions of whether the arts are part of the culture, or whether the people or the food or the architecture, and again having subcategories in all of this. And then when trying to connect it with the Patni archives, what is its history, what is the kind of collection does it hold, and what are the references that the city and the archives can share with each other, in a way that you move from the archives to the city and then draw references from the city and come back to the archives. So this back and forth became a good tool to understand cultural mapping of Bhavnagar. Now, while we did map of the various aspects of what the cultural mapping can be, there was still this missing part in the stories, or in the continuity of the stories of the various subjects that we were looking into, say the visual arts or the photography or the performing arts or handicrafts that were a part of Bhavnagar's history, but now there is not enough documentation or enough representation of it. So then what is the best way to learn about these stories? And it would be through the community members who helped aid the research, and also a few of them became collaborators and contributors for the exhibition. For example, we first met with Usha Kanbai Mehta, who's an author, photographer, collector, and artist who's based in Bhavnagar. And his collection involves a lot of material of different types, whether it be books or whether it be art prints or whether it be pataras or photographs. He holds all these collections, either he's bought them over a period of time or they have been passed on by his elders and his family. For example, this was one of the books written by him, which is the Gujarat Chalchitra Parampara. It gave us the insights on the Saurashtra Film Company, which was based in Rajkot. While it was started by the extended family members of the Patni family, there was still a bit of history that was missing that would give us an idea of how to form the story to put it up as a display and as a story for the exhibition. So the film company was started by Vijay Shankar Patni and Champak Rai Patni, and this reference was given through Shagan Bhai Mehta's book. He also gave us a reference that there was a relationship of patronage between Anant Rai Patni and Amrita Shergill, in which this painting, which is titled Composition, was bought by Anant Rai Patni in 1936 from Shergill. This is looking through his collections, the various types that he has, and then also looking at that the archival collections involve different kinds of furniture or different kinds of materials that can be looked into. We also met Ajay Bhai Vadgama, who is and his family, who are former craftsmen of Patara making industry in Bhavnagar. They have been practitioners of the craft since the past 4 generations, but have obviously now moved on to other professions, wherein Ajay Bhai, who is making his family tree here, he is involved in interior design projects or say aluminium works. And he and his family shared their collections and shared their history of how, for example, they designed this smaller version of a patara as compared to a larger heavy-set patara that is used by families. They designed this such that it would have it would become more popular with the users and could also be transported to other places. These are the tools that they used to make the patara, which was also given with along with the smaller patara to be displayed at the exhibition. This is what the workshop looks like now, but at one point it was a thriving workshop for Niranjan Furniture in Sutharwad in Bhavnagar. So while they own the property now, they this is the condition of the workshop. We also met with Bharat Bhai and Hemabin Mirani, who are the son and daughter-in-law of Jagdeep Bhai Virani, who was a visual artist. Jagdeep Bhai was trained as an engineer, but he was always interested in the arts and crafts since his childhood and pursued it for his entire life. Such as this artwork is a self-portrait that is of him, done by him, and the various other artworks that are in custody of his son and his daughter-in-law include paper layered landscapes, then watercolor paintings, photographs that are taken by him. And they also contributed these collections to the exhibit at the Patni Samadhi. This is meeting Bharat Bhai and Hema Ben at their residence. We also met with Rajubai, who is also a visual artist and an author based in Bhavnagar. First, his collections were looked at from the perspective of the history of printing presses in Bhavnagar, because his father had started the Saraswati printing press. And his collections also, with respect to the printing press, his history also include books, magazines, printing blocks, trays for storing printing blocks, as well as artworks and art prints that are that have been passed on to him. He's also an author. And eventually he also became a contributor for the exhibition and was also a panelist for one of the panel discussions that we had. We also met up with Jaideep Bhai and Mahesh Bhai Parmar and their family. Again, 4 generations of the family are involved in the craft of Kasakam, which is bronze, making of bronze utensils and vessels, which is in Shihor. And they are one of the few workshops that remain today in Shihor who are associated with this metal craft. They explain the manufacturing process right from mixing of the alloy to finishing of the product, and this is what it would look like. While they did not have archival records or other items that could become part of the exhibit, the process of meeting them and understanding the history became important to the archival exhibition, which led to discovering similar stories from the Patni family. For example, these are the Kasa plates that are part of Rupa Ben's Anu, which are the gifts that she received when she got married into the Patni family. And they were put up during the exhibit, and also a story of it was explained at the exhibit. Other collections also included, say, photographs, and then understanding the larger picture of photography interests of how they are passed on across generations. And because we were also looking into the history of patara making, to sort of connect them with wooden patties or trunks which were found in the family home, of how they were used, what is their journey been like, how did they become a part of the family's collections. In the same way, Kumar Bhai Patni's collections from Panchgani were also looked into and became a part of the exhibit, in which we moved from, say, while we were looking at bronze, we also looked at copper and other utensils that he may have. And because we were talking about photography as a subject, his father's cameras and their interest and how that interest passed on to him he also became a part of the story. Another family member, Kalindi Bain Parasharia's collections were looked through for studying the story of the Saurashtra Film Company, because her grandfather was one of the co-founders. And we were still sifting through this material, but we came across these 2 portraits from the collections which became a part of the exhibit. Same way, meeting with Kalpana Ben Bhatt, again talking about photography with a much personal story, in which these are the childhood photographs that were taken by her father of her and her mother and her brother. And then right before she left for college, she was given a camera by her father, and that is how the interest was passed on. Kantiben Vaidya, because we were thinking of building these rooms which would hold these stories and these collective memories. So this was Kantiben's contribution of cupboards which could be placed in the ordas to create this feel, to create the feel of a living space. So just a glimpse of this open ground and the and the Samadhi of Sir Prabhashankar Patni. So coming to the part of the design iterations, while it had to be built as a project from ground up, so what would it take to come to the actual building of the exhibition? So with the help of the vendors from Bhavnagar, this exhibition came alive. And just like the archiving partners were from the community, the makers of this exhibition were also invited from the city itself. While learning about how certain materials work or how certain issues can be looked at, their enthusiasm and their interest in the project also helped us to bring all of this together. So these are just the design options that we were looking at, that what will the space look like, what is the kind of furniture to be put, what is the kind of furniture that should be put in each of the spaces to represent the feel, and in a way to make a place that it would not be a conventional art gallery, because that would have been the easier way to do, but also to have these spaces in which the histories could become more engaging and accessible through the community engagement. And we felt that that is why the spaces should have the feel of being a living space, and have this entire path as if you're walking in between rooms and rooms of a house and reading these stories and then moving out to the street. So this is just to show you of like an overview of how many people were involved in the actual building of the exhibition. And then bringing in the vendors and their expertise to how the exhibition could be built up. And well, it started from the leveling of the ground, because we were trying to create enclosures, and then bringing in the fabrication team, the plywood partitions, the paint work, because each of these rooms had a specific visual design element to look at with a very specific color scheme, such that whatever stories are being presented relate to that. And then finally, after the paint work is done, after the roofing is done, to bring in the furniture and to bring in the archival items, and then to bring in the people. The same vendors, of course, also helped with the neighborhood displays. When we were talking about wall painting, there was this conscious decision of what things should be printed versus what should be painted. Because these painted walls, three such walls were chosen for each of the three sites. And they would sort of become a marker as well as denote movement from one side to another. So coming to the community engagement part, that the exhibition is built and we are open to public. This is a short video. There are 3 short videos for 3 sites in showing that the kind of people who came, who visited the exhibition across age groups, and the different kinds of engagement they had with the display. This was the engagement at into the streets. I feel in more ways than one, it was sort of delightful to see that what had been planned on screen and then it came actually alive, and how we had visualized the spaces, of how we had visualized the community to engage with the stories and the archival items. It did work that way. And then throughout the month-long exhibition, there were also community engagement activities that happened over the weekends or during the opening and closing ceremonies, such as this has been discussed before about the performance at Juno Bungalow, which happened in co-authorship with Young Club, a theatre group which is based in Bhavnagar. The scriptwriter was Pranjal Kashyap, who is also a part of this call. And he is a family member who was invited for specifically for this script. And the director was Dhiren Bhai. The rest of the actors are all from Bhavnagar. There was also a volunteer program in which various institutes of the city were approached, and in a way that the volunteers would either have a background in history or would have something related to Bhavnagar, such that they would engage with the exhibition and take it out to other people. There were also panel discussions. We had 3 panel discussions in which guests were invited from Bhavnagar as well as from other cities, bringing in their expertise on the various topics we talked about. For example, this was about land culture and politics. This talked about neighborhood and where does care begin, and then the ethics of preserving collective memories. The closing ceremony also had performances by local groups, which was the alumni of the MJ College of Commerce. And as an additional curation to engage the community further, a treasure hunt was organized in which the clues were such that all the participants would have to look at the exhibitions across all 3 sites in detail and then answer the questions. And it was very exciting to see how people were running across all 3 sites trying to get the answer first. And this was the number of people who participated. This brings us to the community conversations that this month-long exhibition happened. Who are the people that we could really reach out to, and how do we take forward these conversations? For example, there was Dhiren Bhai Muni from Dakshinamurti, in which the institute's library has a lot of collections of books and other archival material, which they are interested to preserve and conserve, and have offered their space to conduct conservation workshops. Ashish Bhuta, who is the chairman and MD at Genbukt Pharmaceuticals. He's from Shihor and has always been interested in trying to uplift the town and trying to preserve the heritage and culture of the town. On behalf of Patni Archives, Avdi and Ishita visited Shihor on his invitation, where they were taken across the city and looking at what the town is like, what are its various factors for potential projects that can be taken forward. While Rajubai's history, while with working with the printing press, was already looked into, but him as an artist is another story that can be taken forward. So, on behalf of the archives, Ishita also visited Rajubai and looked through his collections related to visual arts and other forms of art. Kadambariba Jadeja, who is the Maharani of Rajkot, came to visit the exhibition on my personal invitation. She is also trying to set up her family's archives in the Darbargarh at Rajkot and Sardar. So in one way, this exhibition gave her a few ideas of what can be worked on and how things can be displayed. She suggested that the family tree, while it holds the names of the men and women, it should also hold their physical locations in a way that to understand what their journeys have been like and what are those stories of migration. She has also offered space at Rajkumar College because it has an association with Sir Patni, and a part of the exhibition can be taken there. Someone was also a panelist for one of the panel discussions. And after the visit and after looking through the exhibition, she is hoping to include Patni archives as a case study in her lectures at CEPT. Mahila College is one of the institutes in Bhavnagar who has a large library collection. And on behalf of the archives, Ishita also visited the institute, in which there are two main collections being looked into. One is the library collections, and the second is the collections of Mahesh Patni, which were donated to the college after the demolition of the Nava bungalow. And this also holds a variety of collections of books, of printing blocks, of letters, and talks of how to take it forward are on. And the last bit is about the learnings, that what are the different feedbacks that we got and how are these feedbacks helpful to take things forward. So, for example, our main way to communicate to people might have been through the local newspapers or through social media. But other sources also should be looked into of how to reach out to the community members more. And it would help if, for example, if there are smaller community engagement events happening throughout the year. And in the same way, that can be aided by visual communication aids such that it brings in people. Also, the kind of exhibition design and planning that can happen such that people would feel comfortable sharing their histories and further making those histories accessible. So then to have a regular feedback receiving system or the kinds of activities that the archives is involved in or the people are involved in, and to share them on a regular basis. And then having basic tools for researching private collections, because as you saw, Rajubai's collections or Bharatbai's collections, trying to connect them with the local or regional knowledge centers such that those collections are preserved and conserved, but also the content of those collections to be brought out in front of people as an exhibit or whatever makes them comfortable. So this is where I sort of conclude that the entire journey, if it had to be put in a photograph, it would be this one. Because as you can see, the dressed up members are in the front. And the night before, when we were putting up the exhibition, is the photograph at the back, where so it sort of, while standing here at the closing ceremony, it sort of brought out these thoughts that this really small team in Bhavnagar and sitting across various locations came together to build something quite momentous. And in sort of concluding the sort of concluding the entire journey by putting up smiles on our faces and also realizing that we managed to achieve something. And just a run through of other community conversations that we had, other feedbacks that we got. Testimonials from the various visitors of what they felt, what the exhibition made them feel, and wanting to bring their collections also to the archives in a hope that they can be preserved. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Anjani and Asta and Yagni for putting this together. I think every iteration is only getting perhaps richer and clearer both. Um, Before we even, sort of open it up, I just feel Pranjal, Soham, Titiksha, if you guys could just quickly introduce yourselves, it'd be very nice for all of us to know each other. We've done introductions for Viren Bhai, Shwetal and Smita.
Hi, I'm Soham. I'm technical advisor to the Pattani archives, and I mean, in the beginning, I had worked with the curatorial process in oral history in the sound memory and archives, and then I have been there as and when I'm needed. But yeah, I'm aware of the whole uh, process and everything. And I've been associated with the archives since about 4 years now. Okay.
Hi, so good to meet you.
Thank you.
I think Pranjal is not there. Titiksha?
Hi, I'm Tatiksha. I'm coordinator at Pattani Archives, and I'm working with archives since last 2 years.
I think a lot of production
hi.
that we talked about has been possible, or a lot of running around on ground with the help of Titiksha.
What is becoming clear to me is that the sheer duration of the research and preparation phase, which is like I think what Soham said is associated for 4 years. He said 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think that is something which is which is quite unusual. I mean, one doesn't kind of come across something like this. I think yes, then some 4 years, 2 years, 3 years. Wow, that's really something.
Right. I think, yeah, over to all three of you, everyone. If we have questions, comments, now it's time for dialogue.
So, I mean, do I take it that except for me, everyone else, including the other two panelists, are in some or the other way familiar with this project, right? I'm the only one who is completely new to this. Yeah. Okay. All right. Just to know that. So I think maybe then it would be again very nice to hear from them first because of their involvement and then what do they think about the outcome.
Shwetal Ben, Dhiren Bhai.
Well, good evening and namaste to all. I'm Dhirendra Vaishnav, a part of senior member of the team, which guides only. At the outset, let me congratulate the technologists because they didn't have a challenge of only 100 meters running. They had 5,000 meters hurdle running with relay race. It was a very, very complicated and very challenging race that they had to run through. And I think they have done it quite well, very well. So their passion has, dominated their patience. And that is how very patiently they have done this job, right from Antral to the exhibition. Well, I will be giving you an idea about my views from the two angles. Number one is a part of the event, all the things. And oh, something wrong there.
We can see and hear you.
Oh, okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you. I thought because in my screen had some problem. Oh, so number one, as a part of the team, well, right from Antral, it created like the effect of a curtain riser for Pattani archives in Bhavnagar. And people got interested, what is going to come next? What is going to come next? Something new. Then came Alap, which was more of a performance rather than the picture posters and all that. And that really created what was the cultural mapping. What does it mean? And what does Pattani archive indicate or demonstrate the cultural mapping of Bhavnagar? The poets, the dramatists, the music composers, they all participated. And that was real good one. And then, of course, the culmination was that about the performance of the play on the life of and the events of Sir Prabhashankar Pattani. All amateur artists, many of them going on the stage first time on the play. But because of the support by the script writer, by the people like all Pattani families and the whole team, they could do it. They could do well. And that was really the window, Pattani window in the life of Sir Prabhashankar Pattani. Some emotional events that are staged, and people could get the idea of the height of his intelligence, the sense of justice, and his depth of emotions and ideals. That was really good idea of Pattani Archives and Pattani Foundation to perform such a story. It's a biopic, but very effective, very effective. Well, second angle is I was more of a receiver of the responses from the various classes of Bhavnagar because I'm involved in the various public institutes also. So for them, this was totally a new concept, especially walkthrough and biopic. I will go to walkthrough. Walkthrough was, it was just it had to be experienced. I can't express through description. It has to be experienced. And that was like the experiential learning. But for Bhavnagaris, it was a different experience, different concept, different method. And I think Pattani Archives has created a way for other organizations to create good impressions about Bhavnagar and its personalities. They're the precursors of that. I think the beginning initiators of that. When we come to the exhibition, the meticulous way the all volunteers prepared something to be lived, something to be experienced. Small things like a small photograph, a small symbolic thing. It was, I think, and people could definitely relish it. They can learn a lot of things from this exhibition. So what I wish now at the end, that all the family members of Pattani family, members of Pattani families, the experts of the curatorial experts, or the performing arts people, or the exhibition experts, and all the researchers and historical people, I appeal every one of in the field to guide whenever necessary. Help these young people really, I think they're very fresh in their experience. And in spite of that, maybe because of that, because they don't carry any baggage, maybe because of that, they have done wonderful things. This is what I'm observing very, very objectively and very frankly. So congratulations again at the end. And I appeal again. We will continue with such efforts. We'll continue with the highlighting. See, we need to go back to the roots, our ideals, our values. And Sir Prabhashankar Patni is one of the ways to study our Indian values, Indian culture. So we should highlight more and more about it. And these are the ways we can highlight. So Niven and your team, excellent. And wish you all good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think these two aspects of what does it mean to bring in emotions when you're talking about history and accessing history, experiencing it or using it in a constructive way to tell stories of the past. One of the things we're seeing is it is allowing community groups to connect, because otherwise one of the things that we've felt with history is that mare su leva deva. That's as straightforward and a correct sentence to use also. And that is what we feel as much time passes by, or if there's a geographical difference or a distance. So what emotions do, and perhaps the telling of stories is allowing us to do, is build this bridge or connect. And there I would say, not just for people of Bhavnagar, of course for them, because Sir Patni sort of worked in Bhavnagar and the family thrived there. But I'm thinking this would then soon be put to test when you think about audiences from other cities also, that you would care for it because the narrative is more important. As you rightly said, he was visionary enough, and I think Tana has written this very rightly. When we think about farmer situation now, and which has come up twice in the last few years, or twice or thrice, and when you see the reforms that have been proposed in from the office in about 100 years ago, you start seeing relevance of history to now. You're picking on emotion, but you're sort of building that relationship of timelessness. And I think the same logic sort of applies for why experiential exhibition or display over see and watch and leave, because even that would have been appreciated if appreciation was the intent. But I think it's to say, if you will hold it, if you will engage with the material, you'll come close to it, or you'll feel like you are at home, or you'll feel like Atamara Jevuj Ghar Chhe, then perhaps you feel that, okay, why I should go and experience or listen to a story which is 100 or 200 or 500 years old. And one is we trying to explore these tools to say, will this change the way we interpret, consume, and take history forward? Just responding to these two aspects, which have been very important tools, but also how wisely have we used them or not, is something that we'll have to constantly question. Krital, Smita, any one of you wants to take it here?
So if I may add to this, Ishita, what you just now spoke about, that this special experience, that it creates an immersive experience, right? So if I understand it correctly, is that the aim was not just to create an archive and an exhibition, but to specifically seek out community engagement with it, right? And
Yes.
and kind of having a concept of rooms or ordos, no? જે ઓરડાઓ બનાવવાનું જે concept છે, I think this has really succeeded as I can see. And I will tell you, I'll give you a couple of comparisons, something that I myself experienced, is that so while visiting a few museums in Europe, so I came across this idea. So there was in a museum in Amsterdam, there was a 1:1 room created of the Schroeder house. Now, everyone who is an architect here perhaps knows what is Schroeder House. So that's Gerrit Rietveld landmark house project. I forget the name of the city. Now this is one of the modernist project where the architect and the client really gelled together. Okay, and it became a successful kind of thing. Now, as architects, as teachers of architecture, we have always talked about the Schroeder house and everything through visuals and plans, which becomes our language for some reason. Now, not having ever visited the house itself. Now that visiting this museum in Amsterdam and actually entering this room, okay, which was created 1:1 scale, it completely changed my perception in the sense that it so much added to my existing perception of that particular place. So even as an architect, if you feel that, oh my god, like, I thought I knew so much about it, but this is new. Now imagine the response of a lay person or general people. So I think this idea of recreating ordas અને એનું જે એક it creates a little theater, right? It's also a set design that you have done. So કારણ કે આ એક family archives નું એક exhibition કરવાનું setting બની રહ્યું છે, so that allowed you to take certain leaps of imaginations, etc., as to what it could have been. And I think that has added very different dimensions to it. Is, I think, a very, very unique and innovative way of displaying these family objects, old furniture, other objects, the stories that you are trying to tell through the objects, and within this creating this spatial experiment. So that is something to add to Dhirendra Bhai's point. Why, like he said, he experienced how people actually related to it, and I think that's this idea of order. And plus તમારા exhibition na title માં જ આ વસ્તુ આવી જાય છે. તો order becomes the center point of the whole conception of creating this, and around it you have other special experiences also. I have a question. So these ordas that you created with such great and loving effort, so are they permanent installations or have they been taken down?
We've been repeatedly getting this question, especially when people came there and got all emotional about but yeah. So Sadhana Society, the bungalow where the first part of the exhibition begins, that building is where the archives office is operating. So parts of it, what were added on, or if we felt we wanted to keep the makeshift, sort of closing system or things like that, we've kept it for future. But apart from that, everything else sort of have been taken down as samadhi or in the neighborhood, and all of that was all temporary.
Achha, okay. Shwetal Ben, tomorrow.
Yeah, I have kind of given my feedback earlier, and this was exactly my closing point that time also, that I wish it wasn't something that was taken away, and it was something that could be dismantled and put up again at some place. So hopefully the next venture, if we can do that, have something which is knocked down and can be moved around, and have some semi-permanent things near the samadhi if it is possible. Today, when I was seeing the thing, I kind of thought that even the wall paintings that were done can become, they're still there? Yeah. No, but
Yeah.
over a period of time, they could become slates, for community activities. And if those walls will be available, like I know you had asked your neighbors if you could use them for a particular time. but you could still, like keep changing those walls and keep doing things over there, to keep that engagement going, so that at least people then start looking out at that for that place, on a regular basis, and say, okay, now what's coming up next, or something is cooking, that kind of a thing. And maybe even have something interactive which makes them ask you, or you can find out what is going to be the response, because it's one thing that they will come and see it. It's another thing when they want to, at what level they want to engage with it, so you could make those as community spaces in some ways, at least the ones which are accessible, uh, and you have the option of doing it. Yeah.
I think so. I'm going to just touch upon this last point, which is something that I also started the presentation with, that this feel that we will need to continue engagement, otherwise they will forget us. And I think even Anjani brought it up in the presentation, that do we need to be in a continued dialogue? And does it happen only through working together or collections, or does it happen spatially or at the neighborhood level? Is something definitely worth sort of jotting down for the coming year or two, to see how it would work. Why I'm saying this is, I mean, having worked in different scenarios, I think I have my heart saying it will work or not work, because people are so event driven. And then leaving a notice board out there, do you really contribute to it? Do you really consume? Because we're already consumed by so much other information. So is the need to curate an event important to the continued relationship or the engagement? Is something that one could put to test. I don't want to assume over here, definitely. And as you rightly said, these are all spaces that we sort of already have. We don't have to go looking for permissions, especially at Samadhi or outside Sadhana Society, the Patni Archives office. Could we try certain community experiments and see how it would be? And that is something I want to connect it back to this point about the kind of spaces we created. And I think I'm getting clearer the more we distance from the project. It's not about just taking it down because that is what we had thought. It's about taking it down because it was designed to be temporary. So if we had to plan for something to be a knockdown and come back again in different places, it would be designed differently. But B, if we had to continue doing something at Samadhi, then again, I don't know if Ordao as a concept, I'm coming back to even what what Smita said. I don't know if that is the concept which would have emerged. Because over here, there was a deliberate attempt to not be thematic or be literal in terms of Ordao. If you see, there is no effort at all in making Tamara Ghar Jeev Dekha Se, something which is otherwise seen again in museums.
Exactly, yeah.
Periodic rooms. બહુ જ conceptual હતું. આ concept પતી ગયો તમે experience કરી લીધો, પછી તમે કદાચ કંઈક નવું શોધશો. તો આને આ કેટલું લાંબુ ચાલી શકશે? And is what I am trying to question or test here. And if one had to continue it or think of what happens at Patni Samadhi for a few more months or years, you would have to come back with a different concept.
So in my understanding, this question can best be answered by the custodians of the Patni family archives, because say for example, say other institutions like museums, let's say the Prince of Wales Museum, now CSMVS in Mumbai. So yes, so it is already an institution, it is already a place, and it continuously has rotating exhibitions, special events. It also has a children's museum now added to it. So there are these continuous those events taking place. So to answer Richita's question, do we really need a series of events to keep people's interest alive? My answer is yes, because I'll tell you, it is because say in a museum like this, the Bombay Museum, because there are all the time there are new events or new shows taking place. It keeps that interest alive. So I'm somebody like me or many others, we keep visiting the place. But obviously So that is all. That is an institution, and it can do it. Now here, the Patni Family Archive has emerged as some kind of an institution. And from what I have seen, you know, the recording that you shared yesterday, I saw it just half an hour before that, and that it completely blew my mind. And I said, okay, like this was because you're talking about planning something, right? Intentions. It was more like intentions and the work in progress. And then today, like in this presentation itself, we also saw the outcome. So that I think the whole project so far has been very ambitious for something like a family archive, right? Very, very ambitious. And both Avni and then Ishita, Avni and the foundation, of course, but then for them to identify someone like Ishita and then working together, I think it's astounding, the ambition of the project that you started with, the time that you allotted and the resources that you allotted to carry it out, right? And then finally culminating into this exhibition. So I would say that yes, an institution has already emerged of a certain note, of a certain track record now, and it can perhaps think of, and you do have a few spaces at your disposal, which are permanent spaces, uh, which are in your possession. They belong to you, and they can become the centers for this. And you can, I think there is definitely a scope of continuing to do this, right? In what way, etc. Ideas will definitely emerge, but after having done so much, right? It would. I mean, I don't think it is expected that you would kind of uh, put a stop to this, and how to extend it. So one way I can think of is that, so here, from what I have understood, is that the story of the neighborhood and the cultural mapping, where was again linkages to so many arts and crafts through the objects or things in possession of different extended family members of Patni archives, and that's how the linkages were made. So that's really great. Now, from the time that Sir Patni's his own time, right? Now there must be other such families, right? So Maharaja of Bhavnagar, as far as I know, I think was an important figure in the freedom movement. He was a nationalist and a Gandhian, right? And therefore, obviously, Sir Patni and other members uh, of the Princess Slate administration. So they must be other families. So is there a way of kind of incorporating like other families from Bhavnagar and creating linkages? I'll tell you why. Because like from where I come now, Panvel, because now for almost 25 years I teach and live in Panvel, and have done a little bit of research on urban history of Panvel, and how that is the urban history of Panvel is directly linked to the family history. It's all created by families, because unlike Bhavnagar, this was not even any seat of power. So it's entirely created by so there are several families. So story of one family is linked to another family, etc., and even communities. Okay, so maybe that could be an extension for you to think about. Who are the other important families who had contribution, let's say in the late 19th century and early 20th century in the freedom movement, who were part of the group that Sir Patni belonged to, and what were those connections. That might be an interesting way of something further going on. And the last thing I would say is that this whole methodology, the research that was carried out to create the stories and the exhibits, etc. But not only that, some of the outcomes, like for example, the responses that were collected from the viewers or the participants, etc. And I believe you have kind of collected them because I saw some examples on the screen. Now, what happens to all this? What happens to this research that was carried out? What happens to these responses that were collected? Right. So, what is your idea of now kind of cataloging it and making it available? So here I would like to give you another example. So there is this Godrej Archives at Vikhroli in the Godrej campus itself, and so they have a permanent curator and a permanent curatorial team. They have a permanent space, and they are doing a phenomenal job of archiving documents, objects, a lot of things. And then that archive is open for research. So because that is one very important function of any archive, that it helps the researchers of all kinds to carry out whether MPhil research, PhD research, or research for a book, etc. So how will this be helped? How would you help a researcher to come? And right, so so that would fulfill that kind of a research-based function of having created an archive. So yeah, so I think these were a few of my immediate observations of of the value that all of you together have created, and how it could be carried forward, or what could be done further with it. So
thank you. I think just to answer your last question, we have already sort of been open to research inquiries, which at the Sadhana Society, which is the Patni Archives office. And this exhibition in particular was more of a formal announcement that now we are open, and the website patniarchives.co.in, which you visited yesterday, has the open hours, closing hours, and will have the accession form and everything. So those systems are sort of laid out. And I think what we try to do here is a reverse process in terms of, let's put out a few research areas for people to perhaps see that they could take it forward.
yes,
Not just the administrative or the political history, but they could also look into arts, and they could look into history, family histories, and they could look into spatial documentation or changes. So we are now hoping, rather now I think the onus is a little bit out on the world, and this was our third internship program. Of course, we only had one intern because we had a more definite intent. But the last two internships, the first internship was 6 students, next internship was 6 students or 5 students, and our RA became a part of the internship. So we have constantly had internships. We also have an expose series. We also go out and present at conferences to say that, okay, we are constantly going to keep doing sort of dissemination from our end, but now it's on institutions and researchers to sort of see value in an archive like this. And of course, the project need not be just built on this archive. This could be one of the resources that you look at and you want to study something else about Bhavnagar, or about political history or something.
So like over there, you see, you showed certain publications or documents from other libraries that are there in Bhavnagar city, right? So so what is the way of collating all that maybe into one place, or the all the publications and books that you have managed now to gather through the family members collections and as part of so Patni Archive, like all these publications in possession of the Patni family archive, but then there are these other couple of other libraries which I mean, whatever little glimpse that I saw, my mouth was really salivating. Oh, I said, my God, look at these pictures and photographs. It's really amazing. So how that network will be created, like that also could be thought about. And digitizing is obviously the way forward and everything. So
Yeah, definitely. So I think we have started all of this with the intent that initially, even if we can become the contact point
right.
for these other collections in the city, and eventually, of course, if we can also find the right resources and funding, then make these other collections available.
And how to create catalog of all these items, because it's a massive task to create a catalog of so many things that you collect. And so you really, I mean, it's it's
Triple, you wanted to add to this point?
Yeah. Actually, I kind of missed. I'm so glad, Smita, you brought that up, because I think digitization is important, but I think it's a very time-consuming thing. And at the same time, you have a lot of material with you, which is accessible physically. I was just wondering if it is possible at some level through the website to keep just information about all the information that you have. So it shows up in the SEO that this archive has information on all these areas, and this is available in terms of photographs, this is available in terms of text. So I'm just trying to kind of organize so that if people want to ask you for it, uh, they know it's there, they can ask you for it, and you can devise a system of how they can access that material while it is still in the process of being digitized. So that
I
was
think
one thing. And
the catalog and the contact list out there, or a sort of a overview, would be a sort of a bit of an urgency when you say, okay, you're publicly open. How else will people know what is there in the archive? So that's a good reminder. Yes.
And the other thing was about the crafts, that the ones that you have connected with. So this is more research based, not about what we're putting out to the world, but about the crafts that you have researched right now. And I don't know if, as one of the other community engagements, you want to work with probably revival or development of these crafts, because that would have a very different impact again in that community as well as all of Bhavnagar, because it will suddenly bring a tangible change around. So that was another thing that I thought about. And there are already some designers who are working with Bhavnagar crafts, so I thought of them, so I'll probably send you some contacts, so it'll then kind of connect.
Plus, a lot of people would be very interested in the history of the port. And if the history of the port is linked with the families in Bhavnagar, then that would be an interesting angle, because the maritime history in India, the enthusiasts about it, it's a niche kind of a subject, but those who are into it very much. And then there was some of these ports were like really thriving ones, and that is what has fueled the prosperity and the and the exchange of ideas from, because the western coast of India and the eastern coast of Africa and the entire Persian Gulf and the Arabian coast and the ports. So that that is also an angle. Yeah, I
think what we're doing, to answer your earlier question, perhaps it will connect back to this. What are we doing with all the research? Testimonials, I'm not sure yet, but research, we are putting down a publication, and we're not calling it a catalog per se. How it will sort of try and tell more than perhaps what the exhibition told. We are trying to put it down so that, again, to answer your and Shwetalben's point about it reaching different audiences to know there is material on ports, there is material on crafts, there's
Yeah.
material on city, and also the website, as well as we put out video stories. So we're doing 3 kinds of post production: publication, video stories, and updating the website with the existing content.
Wonderful. No, but when I said catalog, I didn't mean that kind of a catalog which comes out of as an outcome of an exhibition. I meant like how in library we have that catalog, no, with accession numbers, accession numbers, and entering every object into it, giving it a number, description.
I was just differentiating between an art show catalog and this. I had understood when you said catalog of the collection,
Correct.
which is something that will also come up. And in the meanwhile, even the exhibition can open up these 12 different directions for people to start researching. These were, I think we'll have to have 3-month goal and a 6-month goal, and because the team is only getting shorter and smaller. That's another emotion along with this closing conversation, that it's only going to be more work and lesser people. So how much can we do? But yeah, both. So I'm just trying to say different tools and ways for people to know about the collections or about research possibilities until we can get to digitizing and making things more available through online. So we're constantly finding these alternatives.
No, what I mean, the energy and enthusiasm is amazing. So,
and that I think now
expect
other energies should talk. So Anjani, Soham, if Yagni, Asta, if you guys want to respond to any of these points, of me, Jayavant uncle, or bring up any other point, of course.
No, I think yeah, I mean you've talked about post production, and we're also hoping that maybe once we're back. So of course we've wrapped up and now trying to reorganize the office and get back to normal functions of archiving, cataloging. That is on our plans. But we also hope that we can take this exhibition in a different way to other places, though it has been dismantled. So we would be open to those sort of opportunities if we can take it beyond Bhavnagar and Gujarat. Because of course in Bhavnagar we've received a great response, and we will, I mean, also maybe try to take it in the form of plays elsewhere and not necessarily be, these physical exhibitions. But we are happy to take up those sort of opportunities also.
Soham, Anjani, Asta, anything that you guys want to add, clarify?
I think everything is covered very in very detailed explanations. And one thing that today's presentation was new to me, and it was amazing. It was a very detailed walkthrough of Smita, for your reference, that we have been working in bits and pieces. So all these things I've seen in parts, but today when I saw them like a process, and some of the photographs were new to me too. Then I had not seen the family tree being prepared on the wall.
Mm.
Yeah, it was amazing.
The process images, yes.
Yeah.
And also the concept of the doors and the windows and all this.
Yeah. So
because
I saw the final product. So the process photos I saw today. So.
Right.
Since we stay in Ahmedabad, these kind of things which we miss.
Also, I saw those large format prints of the black and white prints of some of the family members. Oh my God, that was it was too gorgeous for words.
Right.
So I think this is amazing. Like and yes, I mean, I look at my parents' wedding album, and we all family members. Oh my God, it's a hot favorite during all our family functions.
This is what it does to you. You see this exhibition, you be part of this, and I think this will be the feeling of almost everybody who has visited the exhibition, that when you leave it and when you are going back to your place, you'll be thinking about your grandparents. You'll be thinking about your family history.
Yes.
You will go through the material which you're having, and I have been requested कि भाई मेरे दादाजी का मारा दादाનું આ કાગળ છે આનું preservation નું શું થશે, એક એક કાગળ લઈને લોકો આવે. So it happens. It as Ishita says, that it provokes these kind of feelings in you, which is very necessary.
Yeah, I think since we are talking about family, Smita, for us, since the family is spread across the globe, we had some young people from my generation who came to see us for the first time just to see this opening of the archives. So 2 youngsters who just made it just for 3 days from England, despite of being December. And then also younger cousins who just found out that, okay, is this what our family history is? You know, actually seeing it in detail and getting surprised that so many other members besides Sir Pattani also played significant roles. And that's what we were trying to bring out even in the performance. That, you know, they are family histories which we are bringing out stories of different members. So it's always been a challenge to find out more about the women, but through our oral history project, we've been trying to get those stories out, and it's been interesting that you get to know about Lady Pattani and then the daughters and the daughter-in-laws and, you know, things about them.
The families that they came from the place. I mean, you know, that suggestion, because the stories of migrations, you know, in the country, for women it is through marriage, right? So wonderful.
Great. I hope you say that you have roots in Kathiawad. So if you have family, and even if not, do consider visiting us now that we are open. And yes, we'd be happy to show you around. And yes, if you find anything of research interest, of course, then that's something we can always take forward.
Yes. I think, I mean, you know, I have been introduced to this. I'm really grateful to Avni and Ishita for you know, inviting me. I mean, it has kind of made me aware of this wonderful initiative, which otherwise would have passed me by. It has been really, I mean, great, you know, going through the material earlier and today in the presentations. And I'm just imagining what it must have been like actually being there. And certainly, I mean, yeah, I have connections, family connections with them, but there is practically nobody now over there because yeah. So, but
you could just visit in the idea of tracing your own roots.
Right.
Why not?
Your own little expedition to Bhavna.
Yeah.
So the process is something that we haven't covered in this at all, is what I realized. So, and as Soham said, this itself was so detailed, and we had to take 40 minutes just to talk about this. But over there, one of the things we did was about communicating to the audiences is that you could come to the city and do more things. It's not just about coming and seeing the exhibition. So we actually, in the invite, and we'll perhaps send it to you for you to see. So at the back of it, there is a whole map, which first it has a smaller map of the exhibition, but which is perhaps for those who might come and then understand, but city map, which shows you some familiar famous places, but places which the research team on ground discovered, and then also a list of places around Bhavnagar. So which is to say that indirectly a project like this could also add to the cultural landscapes or the tourism of the city itself. So which is why I just remembered that anybody coming could do more things than just visit the archive or the exhibition. And how these projects sort of embed themselves, you know, into a larger initiative or a goal.
Correct. Yeah, it certainly deserves to be documented properly, and more people should know about it. They can also replicate ideas and concepts, and because
definitely,
yeah. Right.
We had one or two family history project initiators or founders who had visited us with the same intent, somebody from Bhopal and then one more place, with the same logic that, yeah, we would also want to do this if we could. Then how do we approach it? And then that is where the frameworks would start mattering. That is why these kind of questions
Yes.
that you keep in mind, and yeah, what do you not miss out on? Nice. Thank you so much, Smita, for staying with us so long also, even though we have run over time.
Entirely my pleasure. My evening was made today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we hope to stay in touch with you. And
Yeah.
any other thoughts come to you, please do keep writing to us.
And we'll take you to the exhibition through publication.
Yeah.
That's a good way to say it.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So
Okay.
Thank you so much.